Please recite another loud salawat. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا. ولما رأى المؤمنون الأحزاب قالوا هذا ما وعدنا الله ورسوله وصدق الله ورسوله وما زادهم إلا إيمانا وتسليما. من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه فمنهم من قضى نحبه ومنهم من ينتظر وما بدلوا تبديلا. ليجزي الله الصادقين بصدقهم ويعذب المنافقين إن شاء أو يتوب عليهم إن الله كان غفورا رحيما. ورد الله الذين كفروا بغيظهم لم ينالوا خيرا وكفى الله المؤمنين القتال وكان الله قويا عزيزا. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Jazakallah, Brother Musa, for that recitation. Before we proceed, if we can ask the brothers in the back, if you can move up to this carpeted area so those sisters can have some space. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now I'd like to invite up Brother Muhammad Ibrahim for the recitation of As-Salam. Let's welcome him with another loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Salawat.
Ya Ali, 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 Ya Ali. I hear the munajat of Ali from the dawning sunrise. I wonder why he weeps so much this 19th morning and cries. Why the blood-red colors in the skies this 19th morning? Why are all the birds and all the bees restless and mourning? Why such strong winds and why trees swaying as if to break dead? It seems this day the world's to end. I shudder and clutch my head. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. Mawla walks on towards the masjid where he knows what's to come. I hear him ask repentance and patience in a deep hum. I know not why, but I want to try to stop him going. But he smiles at me and tells me his fate is waiting. Sorrow overcomes me as he steps inside the masjid. The trees and beasts all weep with me from all around and surround. Ya Ali, 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 Ya Ali. Mawla wakes Muljim up, who hides a poisoned sword beneath him. Think you not Ali knows not who is to slash at and kill him? Ali listens to his last adhan and gets up to lead. And the angels start to weep as Ali prepares to bleed. Muljim comes from behind and strikes the head of Ali in sajda, and I collapse as Ali shouts, Fusto bi Rabbil Kaaba. Ya Ali, 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 Ya Ali. I pass an orphan weeping who has seen my kindly father. I pass a widow weeping, I have lost my kindly helper. I pass a leper weeping, where is gone my kindly nurser? I pass a beggar weeping, have you seen my kindly feeder? Then I pass by Mawla Ali's home, and weeping I see Ya Ali, the father, helper, nurser, divine mercy. Ya Ali, 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 Ya Ali. Salawat.
Thank you, Brother Muhammad, for that beautiful recitation. A few announcements before we proceed with the lecture. As we know, the time change has resulted in Maghrib now being about 7:25. So we will be starting our program at 6:30 with Quran recitation for men and for women separately, and then followed by Dua Fita and then Maghrib. That will be the program for the rest of the month. For this week, just like with yesterday, there will be a majlis tomorrow after iftar. Just like today, English in this hall, Urdu in the adjacent hall, with Amal afterwards. Amal starting roughly 10 p.m. And just like yesterday, tomorrow's Amal will be with Sayyid Sulaiman and Sheikh Chola till Suhoor, inshallah. So please join for the duration of the night as you're able. And then on Wednesday, there is a ladies' majlis program, an Urdu ladies' majlis program at 5 p.m. With iftar afterwards for everyone as per normal schedule. And then Thursday night will be the main Laylatul Qadr program all night, inshallah, with our two alams after iftar starting at 10 p.m. So please join us for all these events and help us maintain our home, our center with cleanliness, without wastage of food, and by monitoring your children. Please make sure they're not in adjacent halls while you're in a different hall, or make sure they're not outside while you're inside. We've had some issues and we don't want to escalate that, so please be mindful of your children. Lastly, a Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of the sponsors, especially for our Shahada that are dying by the hundreds and thousands in Iran and Lebanon and elsewhere in the world. So for them. I would like to invite our respected scholar Sayyid Sulaiman to the member. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Surah Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are now entering into the final third of the month of Ramadan, which is, according to the teaching and the practice of our Prophet, the most important part of the month, in which there is the greatest power in the fulfillment of hajat, in the reward for good deeds, in the answering of prayers, and in the possibility of coming close to Allah. And that is why the nights of Qadr, or we should say the night of Qadr, which is dispersed among the nights of the month of Ramadan, it is said that it is among the last 10 nights of this month, and in particular the odd nights among the last 10 nights. And then with further specification, we have the emphasis from Ahlul Bayt on the 19th and the 21st and the 23rd. But in reality, it is not just those specific nights, it is that last 10 days of the month of Ramadan which has a special importance. And that is why traditionally i'tikaf used to be performed during the month of Ramadan, and in particular during these last 10 nights. That was the practice of our beloved Prophet Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. The entire night, the entire month of Ramadan, in particular the nights, they were a time for him to worship. But then in these last 10 nights, he would almost turn away from his mundane affairs and his daily obligations that he would observe in the rest of the year, and he would devote himself exclusively towards the worship of Allah. And he would stay in the masjid, and that is known as i'tikaf, a form of spiritual retreat or exercise. And although it may not be possible for many of us due to our circumstances and our schedules or the availability of the requirements for i'tikaf, it may not be possible for many of us to perform that very important and very great act of worship. There is a reminder in the way that i'tikaf is performed that tells us something about spirituality within Islam. Because many of us, even as Muslims, we have a maybe subconscious view of spirituality that is rooted in practices that have come from other religions or other traditions, or maybe our own habit, our own personality, but that are not actually the practice and the teaching of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhimu salatu wassalam. You may have seen people, or you may know people who become religious. And when they become religious, especially if they were not very religious before, then their religiosity and their practice and their taking their faith seriously often causes them to be more inflexible and uncompromising with their family. And maybe it causes fights with their parents, or a distance from their siblings or from their relatives or from their circle of friends, that, well, now I want to be religious, and my family or my relatives, they are not that religious, and so I will oppose them, or I will call them out, or I will distance myself from them, and I will say that I'm going to look for better company that is up to my level, and I will separate myself from that environment or that circle of friends and family that is less religious. And that impulse is a noble impulse. We don't want to be so close to a secular or a materialistic or a shallow, or even worse, an impious and sinful society and environment, that we are influenced by their language and by their values and by their priorities and their lifestyle. So the impulse to say that I have been blessed to value my religion and I want to separate myself from anything that is outside of attention to God and worship of God and service to God, that is a good impulse. But the way that Ahlul Bayt practiced it and taught it, the way that our Prophet practiced it and taught it, is not that your religiosity means that you isolate yourself from your family and from your social environment, but rather you inoculate yourself from being influenced by it, and instead you strive to influence it in a positive direction. One very simple example that we have every day is in our daily prayer. Some of you probably have an easy time focusing in your prayer. Some of you, like me, you tend to get distracted. And if you don't remember to put your phone on the ground in front of you when you are praying, and there is a vibration, then all of a sudden you're wondering, is this that important call that I was waiting for? You're praying to Allah, but that vibration brought you back down to earth. And that is why it's a good idea, put your phone on silent, or what I try to do when I remember, put it somewhere out of sight, face down and not in a pocket, not on your person. But then sometimes there are aspects of your environment that you can't just put it on silent, like if you have small kids. If there were a switch where you could put them on vibrate or put them on silent, then whoever invents it and patents it would earn a lot of money and a lot of du'as from parents. But there is no such switch. And so if you are praying and you have a small child, or sometimes you have an older child that is mischievous and wants to see if they can have a little bit of fun and distract you in your prayer, or somebody who doesn't know that you are praying and they're looking for the laundry detergent and they call you from the next room and you're trying to focus on your prayer. So sometimes you hear things, sometimes you see things that distract you from your prayer. One thing that would make it easier for you to concentrate is if you close your eyes. You close your eyes, you can't close your ears, but when you close your eyes, not only are you not influenced by visual stimulus, you also often find it easier to tune out auditory stimulus, because you can kind of go into your own world. And so that would make it easier for you to focus in your prayer. But according to the teachings of Islam, it is makruh to close your eyes when you are praying. Why? Allah knows the wisdom of His commandments, but one thing that we can maybe understand from that teaching is that Allah wants us to train ourselves to tune out the distraction. So those sounds, they are going to be there. They are the sounds of my children, my family, my environment. And in my prayer, I am practicing that while I have those distractions, that vibration will come, that call will come, the various things that call our attention rightfully or needlessly, they are there and they're part of our life. And the things that we may see, the things that may distract us, they are there. I should focus on tuning out and turning my attention and my orientation towards Allah, not by saying I need to leave this house and go where there is no family and there is no young child and there is no distraction, and I need to make an announcement that I am going to pray, so everybody has to be silent and not make any sounds, but rather for me to be able to develop the attentiveness to Allah and the concentration that those distractions exist and I can turn myself towards Allah. That practice that you can acquire in your prayer will make you a better ambassador of your faith when you are not praying. Because you will be at work, you will be at school, people are gossiping, and you won't just be called in to listen and say, can you repeat that? Who did that? Show me that picture again. And then comment and further that gossip or whatever unworthy actions that there are. You will be in that environment that you need to be in to get your education, to earn your livelihood, to go to the grocery store and to buy your needs, especially if you're prepping for the end of the world. Then you may need to spend a lot of time getting those supplies and making sure that you're not left at the end of the line. Well, when you go, then there's going to be a lot of things that may distract you from your faith. But in your prayer, you are practicing that you are part of this world, but you are not of this world. You are living in this world, but you are not living for this world. I'tikaf is another example. The prayer example is a daily example. You and I, we pray every day. And sometimes maybe Salatul Fajr, everybody is sleeping, so it's very peaceful. And if you're awake and alert, then you can concentrate. But the other prayers, particularly Dhuhr and Asr, especially if you're praying in school, maybe in some closet or some less busy part of the library or in a Muslim Student Association back office where people are coming and going, then it may not be that easy to concentrate. It may not be as easy as it is for Maghrib and Isha or as it is for Salatul Fajr. But think of that now, before you start your prayer, as an opportunity to tune into Allah and to tune out of the world, even if you are living within this world. So i'tikaf is a spiritual retreat. Now, where would you think of going to a spiritual retreat? Someplace on a mountaintop where you have, wonderful scenery and you can look down into a valley and there is a nice lake, maybe some flowing water, so you get the sound of the water and the rustling of the leaves and the wind and, something that really captures your imagination. And you can hear birds in the sky and you can see some wildlife, hopefully nothing too scary. And then you have a cabin and you have a musalla and you're gonna attend to God. That's probably what we would imagine would be the ideal spiritual retreat, right? Where you'll enjoy the dhikr. You will enjoy the recitation of Quran. Not a sound other than the sound of the birds and the wind and the flowing water crashing against the rocks and the beauty of God's creation. But i'tikaf cannot be done in such a place. That greatest of spiritual retreats that our Prophet, that Ahlul Bayt used to practice. You can't do it in nature. It has to be done in a masjid. And according to the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, you can't even do it in every masjid. So masajid in a city where there is a large Muslim population, they are of different types. You have the masjid, which is the masjid of a neighborhood, Masjidul Hay, Masjidul Mahal. Right? The masjid of maybe a neighborhood where you have jama'at. Sometimes you don't even have a jama'at, but people will come from their homes. It's a clean place and people will pray there. And maybe there is jama'at for every prayer or for some prayers, but that is a masjid. Often it's a very small masjid and it's just for the daily prayers. And then you have a masjid jami'. Jami' means a masjid where people gather together and you have Jum'ah. And according to the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, there is a minimum distance between two masjids where Jum'ah is going to be held, because it is meant to gather people from a larger distance. So you come out of your comfort zone in your neighborhood where you know everybody, or maybe you're related to everybody if it is kind of a traditional city where the neighborhoods are often organized around clan or family ties, and you go to a larger masjid. That masjid jami' is often going to be not in the residential part of the city, but in a slightly more commercial part of the city. So there is hustle and bustle. There are people you don't know coming and going from a different ethnicity, maybe from a different school of thought within Islam, and you have now a masjid jami' where there are more people, more commotion, more distractions. That is the only place that you can do i'tikaf according to the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. And perhaps the wisdom is the similar as what was understood from the prayer, that your religiosity is not going to come where you say, I'm going to escape to a cave and that's where I'm going to worship God. I am going to escape to this yurt or this cabin in a pristine area of nature, and that's where I'm going to worship God. Or on the flip side, where I make an excuse for myself, yeah, I would be better in ibadah, but you don't know my spouse, you don't know my family, you don't know my job requirements. And so we make excuses for ourselves because we have responsibilities and we have relationships and we have people who may not, wake us up for Salatul Layl and tell us that they have already made a glass of hot cocoa to give us some drink to wake us up, or given us breakfast or our morning caffeine. And so we feel like, well, I don't have the circumstances, and I make an excuse for myself. But rather, spirituality in the teaching of Ahlul Bayt, it comes from recognizing that God created us to be social and to be part of society. And He gave us family members, and not one of the people that He gave us in our life, even that one relative that you find the most frustrating and the most disagreeable, not one of them was given to you by Allah by accident or by mistake or because Allah just wanted to trip you up and give you a hard time. They were given to us in God's wisdom and with a purpose, a test, but also a means to serve and to worship and to honor our Creator by honoring that relationship that He gave us within our life. And your spirituality is going to come. Your proximity to God is going to come, not by escaping to a cave, not by escaping to masqat, not by escaping from the world and its distractions, but rather by living within that world and then separating yourself from living for it and having all of your concerns be about your comfort and your needs and your wants and your whim. And if we understand that spiritual point, then we can understand the beauty of the character and the example of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Yesterday we spoke a little bit about the first stage of the life of Imam Ali. He was the right-hand man and the closest aid and assistant, and not just the companion of our Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wa And his role in Islam was not to fulfill just one particular task, but rather it was to be where needed and to serve however it would be of greatest help to the Prophet and of greatest assistance. Maybe some of us, we have this stereotype in our mind that Imam Ali was a warrior, and that because he was so courageous, he must have yearned to always be on the battlefield and show his heroism. But that was not the character of Imam Ali. He went to the battlefield because that was needed when there was no one else who had the courage and who had the ability to stand in defense of Islam. And maybe one of the reasons why sometimes the Prophet would say to Imam Ali that wait and give others a chance, it was because the Prophet wanted for people to know that when Imam Ali went to the battlefield, when he slayed Amr ibn Abd in the battle of Khandaq, when he conquered that most difficult fortress in Khaybar, or any of the other exploits and the heroism of Imam Ali, it wasn't because he was rushing to the battlefield and not giving anybody else a chance, but rather it was because there was no one else available, no one else ready, and nobody else qualified to perform that task and to show that heroism and that courage and to serve Islam and establish this religion. And so after having given others a chance, the Prophet said to Imam Ali that now I give you the standard and I give you permission, and go and defeat the enemy and establish the religion and the message of Allah in this battlefield. But for Imam Ali alayhi salam, the point was not to go and fight. The point was not to go and defeat the enemy. The victory was not about the conquest or the battle. The victory was about offering his life and saying that for the religion of Allah, for the mission of the Prophet, I am present. And I will do whatever is needed to further the goal and to share in the burden that our Prophet has been entrusted with in guiding humanity. And that is why, if we want to summarize the life of Imam Ali, this verse of Quran is perhaps one of the most beautiful encapsulations. It is a command of Allah for the Prophet, and a slogan for life given to our Prophet, and taught by the Prophet in his words and in his practice to Imam Ali and the members of Ahlul Bayt. And it encapsulates the life of Imam Ali. قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. That is a motto for us, a slogan for us, an ideal for us to live and to work towards and to aspire to, that say, my prayer and my worship and my ritual and my life and my death, I dedicate them all, I will them all, and I devote them all for the sake of Lillahi Rabbil Alameen, for Allah, the Lord of all of creation. So the first stage of Imam Ali's life was during the time of the Prophet, when we see his single-minded devotion, not just the courage on the battlefield, but even outside of the battlefield. In the 9th year of Hijrah, contrary to many people's expectation, there was what for many people was expected to be the most trying battle. And at that point, the Prophet said to Imam Ali that I want you to stay back in Medina. And which battle was that? The Battle of Tabuk. It's called the Battle of Tabuk. We say Ghazwat Tabuk, but it wasn't really a battle. It wasn't really a ghazwa, although it is called that in books of history, because there was no actual fighting that takes place. And according to some historians, there was never any fighting that was meant to take place. It was a rumor that was circulated by people who wanted to perform kind of a, these days they would call it, a kinetic police action to overthrow the government of the Prophet. A coup d'etat, so to speak. So what do? You make a rumor that there is a threat on the frontier. And the Prophet has to address that, because even if there is no threat, and even if the Prophet knows that there is no threat, if the rumor circulates and the Prophet does not take decisive action, then the existence of the rumor itself will destabilize your society, because the tribes in that area, they will say, well, the Prophet doesn't take things seriously, so next time we will actually engage in conspiracy. Battle of Tabuk. Now some people will say that you followers of Ahlul Bayt make a big deal that this Battle of Tabuk and the fact that the Prophet appointed Imam Ali as his successor or his representative in Medina, the fact that this indicates that Imam Ali was to be the successor of the Prophet, this is not true. Because in the previous expeditions when the Prophet left Medina, he also appointed people as the governor of Medina. So, Badr was outside of Medina. Uhud was within basically the suburbs of Medina. And Khandaq also was in Medina where the Prophet was there. But in the expedition to Hudaybiyah, in the trip for Umratul Qada, in the Prophet's trip for the Battle of Khaybar. So in these other expeditions and other expeditions, the Prophet would appoint somebody in Medina. So why make a big deal and say, oh, the Prophet appointed Imam Ali in Tabuk, and therefore you say that Imam Ali was meant to be the successor of the Prophet? What about all those other battles? The Prophet also appointed somebody as his deputy in Medina in the other battles. So are all of them supposed to be the Khalifa? And the answer to that is that Tabuk was a very different circumstance because there was political conspiracy that was taking place. How so? Towards the end of the previous year, the 8th year of Hijrah, a very important event took place that changed the course of Islamic history. And that was Fath Makkah, the conquest of Makkah. And with the conquest of Makkah, and then soon afterwards, the acceptance of Islam, at least in name, by the people of Makkah, and then the conquest of the Bedouin tribes around Makkah and Ta'if, and the acceptance of Islam on the part of the people of Ta'if. So now you had Quraysh, you had the tribe of Thaqif, you had the Bedouin tribe of Hawazin. These are the main centers of population and commerce and political influence and social power in Hijaz. When all of them became Muslim, many of them now, the wealthy and the powerful of them, they came to Medina. Abu Sufyan became a resident of Medina. And his sons, Utbah, Yazid, Abu Sufyan, they came to Medina. This is not that Yazid who was the son of Muawiyah, the brother of Muawiyah. His older brother was also named Yazid. So these now members of Quraysh, who until yesterday were open enemies of the Prophet, and even today in their hearts were antagonistic towards Islam and towards the Prophet and towards Ahlul Bayt, who represented the continuity of the religion of Islam. Did they lose their animosity? No. Did they lose their wealth and their networks and their connections from Rome to Yemen and the ability to conspire and try to get their revenge against Islam? No. And now they were in Medina. So the difference is that yes, when the Prophet went for Hudaybiyah, when the Prophet went to Khaybar, when the Prophet went in previous expeditions, he did appoint somebody as his governor in Medina. But largely speaking, he just needed somebody to administer the city and perform the prayers and hold the peace until the Prophet came back. After the conquest of Makkah, you have all of these new people who had come into Medina and they did not know about Islam. And many of them, they had been the greatest enemies of Islam. And many of them, they had a great deal of wealth and a great deal of influence. And this is described in Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th chapter of the Quran, because this is when that chapter was revealed. And so Masjid al-Dirar, that masjid which was built in order to weaken Islam and in order to undermine the Prophet, and the exploits of the allies of Quraysh in order to weaken Islam from within, it is in this time period that those are taking shape. So now, when the Prophet goes for Tabuk, people think that there is a commotion in the frontier. And you would need your best warriors in order to confront that Roman threat. Because Rome has professional soldiers. And this was the largest army that the Prophet took. 30,000 soldiers, of which 10,000 were cavalry, mounted, and 20,000 were infantry on foot. How many soldiers and companions did the Prophet have in the conquest of Mecca? 10,000. So now in just a few months, you can see how much Islam has expanded, that you go from 10,000 to 30,000. But when you have an influx, what happens? All of a sudden, there is a dilution of the passion and even the institutional knowledge of the religion and its value system that existed before. Because now everybody has come in, the riffraff has come in, and they are part of that army. So now the Prophet says to Imam Ali that either you have to stay in Medina or I have to stay in Medina. Inna al-Madinata la tasluh illa bika aw bi. Or la budda lil madinati minka aw minni. Either you have to be in Medina or I have to be in Medina. And Imam Ali said, what is your command? And the Prophet said, I leave you as my deputy in Medina. This is not just an appointment where somebody is there as a placeholder, but rather it is a statement that when there are difficult circumstances and you are dealing with munafiqeen and you are dealing with people who may wish to undermine Islam, then you need to have the wisdom and you need to have the courage and you need to have the knowledge of Imam Ali. Not even any other companion would be able to do that. So this is now a different kind of battle and a different kind of courage that is needed. Not where you brandish a sword and you fight, but where you deal with the conspiracy and with the faithlessness of people who claim to be Muslims. And you don't say, to hell with you, I'm going to go off on my own. But you say that I am going to work and I am going to ensure that the message of the Prophet is not compromised or is not forgotten. Now, one of the things that the whole rumors was for is to empty Medina of the Prophet so that the coup will succeed. And when the Prophet says that Imam Ali, you are to be my successor, that conspiracy now is undermined. So those same people, they began rumor mongering. That the Prophet, he must have had a fight with Imam Ali. إِنَّمَا تَرَكَهُ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ اسْتِثْقَالًا لَهُ. Allah found, the Prophet found the presence of Imam Ali to be a burden, so he said, why don't you stay back in Medina, don't bother me with your presence, na'udhu billah. Now, Imam Ali was not affected by that. But if that rumor circulates, then it will undermine the ability of Imam Ali to manage the affairs. So Imam Ali, he left Medina not because he himself had doubt in the wisdom of the Prophet or any hesitation in obedience to the Prophet, but because he needed a new and a more clear and a decisive mandate in order to carry out the command of the Prophet. So when you read history, you might see people, they say that Imam Ali, he left in an agitated state and he came to the Prophet and he said, this is what people are saying. And sometimes the way that the historical narratives present it, it's as if Imam Ali, na'udhu billah, was weak-minded and all of these rumors overwhelmed him and he came out crying that, Ya Rasulullah, did you leave me because you found my presence to be a burden and you didn't want to have me in your company? No. But sometimes when there is that rumor mongering, you need to get clarity from your leader, from the Prophet, so that your mandate is clear. And that is why Imam Ali left. Not because of weakness and not because of doubt, but in order to ensure that he will have that clear guidance and that clear mandate that will allow him to carry out his appointed task. So he said to the Prophet, just outside of Medina, when the army or the expedition had started on its journey to the north towards the Roman frontier, that this is what people are saying. And that is when the Prophet said the famous Hadithul Manzila. Not the only time, but the most famous time, because everybody heard it, and it was like a very decisive explanation of the unique virtue of Imam Ali. أما ترضى أن تكون مني بمنزلة هارون من موسى إلا أنه لا نبي بعدي. Just like Musa left for that divine appointment, and he knew that the people that he was leaving behind were so weak in their faith that they would be tempted to worship a golden calf. I am leaving my people for this expedition, and I know especially those new people who have superficially accepted Islam after the conquest of Mecca, they may also be tempted to return to polytheism, if not overtly, then implicitly. And just as the only person who could be in leadership of Bani Israel in the absence of Musa alayhi salam was his brother and his representative Harun, the only person who can represent the Prophet, he says, أَمَا تَرْضَى أَن تَكُونَ مِنِّي بِمَنْزِلَةِ هَارُونَ مِن مُوسَى. You are to me as Harun was to Musa. إِلَّا أَنَّهُ لَا نَبِيَّ بَعْدِي. The only difference is that Harun and Musa were both prophets, and in this case, I am a prophet, but you are not a prophet. Otherwise, you have that same position with respect to me. And then Imam Ali returned to Medina, and he governed the affairs until the Prophet and that army known as Jaysh al-Usra, that army that went in hard circumstances and difficulties towards the frontier, they returned back to Medina. From here we can see one of the other defining aspects of the character of Imam Ali that sometimes we don't appreciate enough. And that is the hilm of Imam Ali, the forbearance and the patience. We live in stressful times. Some of you may feel like you have double the obligation that you are able to carry out. Traffic gets worse and worse. Some of you had a few good months or years where you were working from home, and now you have back to that long commute. Sometimes it seems pointless for many people because you aren't any more effective or efficient, but it just takes extra hours from your day. Many people at work, if there is downsizing, they have to do more with less support and fewer resources. Or they may have that implicit threat of layoffs or downsizing and stress with family, with so many things. When we are stressed, it is very easy for us to lose our patience, to become irritable. And if we have to keep kind of a sort of artificial smile on our face when we're at work, then many of us, what do? We come home and we let it out on our kids, we let it out on our family members, because now no one's going to fire us. Hopefully. So sometimes we vent and we express our insecurity, our frustration when we feel safe. Our irritability because of our health, because of our responsibilities. And this is where we learn, particularly from Imam Ali, the beauty of his hilm. That your tongue should not just be conveying whatever is in your heart with no filter. That's not a sign of sincerity. It's not a sign of honesty, but is a sign of immaturity. Your actions should not just represent what you feel like doing at any one moment. But there should be a filter and there should be a discipline. And that filter is, what is it that would be pleasing to Allah? What is it that will be of benefit to my family, to my relationship, and that will earn me reward and pleasure from Allah? What is it that will make me most resemble Ahlul Bayt themselves? Just a few examples of the hilm of Imam Ali. In the battle of Jamal, Imam Ali attained a resounding victory over his most intractable enemies. One of the people who came and was captured by Imam Ali was Marwan ibn al-Hakam, a person who grew up. His father, Al-Hakam ibn al-As, used to mock the Prophet in word, in poetry, and even walk behind the Prophet. You know how sometimes jesters or clowns, they will exaggerate the motions of a person and make faces just to belittle the person. So that was the household that Marwan grew up in, and that was the character that he had towards Ahlul Bayt. He was young in the time of the Prophet, but after the Prophet, the mocking that his father showed towards the Prophet, Marwan showed to Ahlul Bayt. Animosity and never anything constructive or good to say, and always something destructive. This is the same Marwan who after Muawiyah died, he gave the advice to the governor of Medina, Walid ibn Utbah, that don't let Imam Hussein leave. If he doesn't give his allegiance, then kill him now. That is the level of hatred that Marwan had for Ahlul Bayt. That was more than 20 years in the future, but it was that same personality. And now, in the Battle of Jamal, with that history of animosity and fighting against Imam Ali, Marwan is a captive. And Imam Ali, he says, Marwan, I have forgiven you. No imprisonment, no corporal punishment, no lashes, no fine. Did Marwan deserve, if not physical punishment, at least a scolding? At least, did you not see that Allah gave me victory? Imagine if any of us had been in that position. Maybe we could control our hand from punching the person in the face. That would give you an assault charge, right? So you are able to control yourself. But would any of us be able to hold our tongue and not insult that person back? Some of us now, when we see the enemies of Islam and we see the people who have hurt our ulama, our maraji', our sanctities, we use those vulgar words that we sometimes learn from people who don't have faith and are not students of Ahlul Bayt. And especially now, online, there are so many of these vulgar, coarse words that are taken for granted. People think that it's normal. If you are a follower of Ahlul Bayt, then any language or any word that is vulgar and that is coarse, that should not come on my lips or on my fingers if I am writing and I am typing. It doesn't matter if you're anonymous. It doesn't matter if they are evil. It doesn't matter if everybody else is saying it, even people who are Muslims. That language is not befitting of a person who is a follower of Ahlul Bayt. Imam Ali said, Marwan, go. One of the people who came was Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Now, Abdullah ibn Zubayr was an enemy of Ahlul Bayt. Such an enemy that Imam Ali says that his father Zubayr, he used to be a lover of Ahlul Bayt, one of those people who refused to pledge allegiance to the government of Saqifa and supported Imam Ali with his sword and was ready to give his life, was Zubayr. He unsheathed his sword in the house of Sayyidah Fatima to defend Ahlul Bayt and their right. But so hard was the animosity of Abdullah ibn Zubayr that Imam Ali said, مَا زَالَ الزُّبَيْرُ مِنَّا أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ حَتَّى نَشَأَ ابْنُهُ or ibnuhu al-mash'um. This ill-fated son, when he grew up, he turned his father against Ahlul Bayt. And the history of Abdullah ibn Zubayr when he attained government power, that is also written in history. And now he came in the captivity of Imam Ali after the victory of Imam Ali in the Battle of Jamal. One of the things that Abdullah ibn Zubayr has done is that when he came to Basra, he gave a sermon, because Basra was nominally under the control of Imam Ali. It had submitted to and pledged allegiance to the government of Imam Ali, and Imam Ali had sent his governor Uthman ibn Hunayf to govern the city of Basra. Abdullah ibn Zubayr gave a vulgar sermon insulting Imam Ali with the most unworthy language in order to overpower the city. And then they killed those people who were loyal to Imam Ali and in charge of the public treasury and took control of the treasury. And they tortured Uthman ibn Hunayf, that aged companion of Prophet Muhammad and that respected Ansari, and they picked all of the hair of his head and his beard, a very vicious form and painful form of torture and an insult to an old man. And they were almost going to kill him, until some people said that Sahl ibn Hunayf, his brother, is Imam Ali's governor in Medina. If you kill the governor of Imam Ali in Basra, then your property and your family will not be safe in Medina. And so they tortured him, they didn't kill him. So Abdullah ibn Zubayr had been guilty of murder and of torture and of embezzlement of public funds, because the treasury of Basra was rightfully under the authority of Imam Ali and his governor, and it was taken by Abdullah ibn Zubayr. It was Talha and Zubayr and Aisha, but the young and very active member of that group was Abdullah ibn Zubayr. So he had not the only role, but a very prominent role in the sermon insulting Imam Ali that was made by Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Now he has come into the captivity of Imam Ali. What did Imam Ali say? اذهب لا أرينك. No punishment, no insult. Go, لا أرينك. I don't want to see your face. Now if a person knows who is Imam Ali, for Imam Ali to say to somebody, لا أرينك, that is the biggest punishment. But it is magnanimity and grace that after all of those crimes, Imam Ali says, I just don't want you to be here. And the honor with which Imam Ali returned Aisha to Medina after the Battle of Jamal, that is known in history. Just one final example in the interest of time. In the Battle of Siffin, Muawiyah is the enemy. Muawiyah, who has such animosity in his youth before accepting Islam to the Prophet and to God and to the Quran and to Islam. And after nominally accepting Islam, animosity to Ahlul Bayt. And now he has prepared an army and refused to submit to the government of Imam Ali that the Muhajirin and the Ansar have submitted to. And Ahlul Sunnah and Ahlul Tashayyu, we all agree that Imam Ali was the legitimate governor and Khalifa of that time. This is a matter of consensus. And it is a matter of consensus that Muawiyah was in the wrong. And Imam Ali in that battle, he sees some of his companions insulting Muawiyah. And he says, Inni akrahu lakum an takunu sabbabin. I don't like to see my companions be people who insult. We would say, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is Muawiyah. In our time, we would say, I'm insulting, a tyrant. I am insulting somebody who is worthy of mockery and insult. and who is an enemy. But Imam Ali didn't say Muawiyah doesn't deserve it. He says, Inni akrahu lakum an takunu sabbabin. I don't want you because you are my followers. You are going to be known as the partisans of Ali. You are going to be known as the believers. What binds you to Ali is piety, is love of God. So I don't want you to be sabbab, people who do sab, shatm, who insult. ولكن لو وصفتم أعمالهم وذكرتم حالهم لكان أصوب في القول وأبلغ في العذر. So what should they do? Should they stay silent? The Imam says, no, you don't have to be silent. Just describe to people what they are doing. It's Muawiyah, you don't need to insult. Just tell people this is their character. And describe their state, describe their actions that will be aswaba fil qawl, that is more correct and more upright and more righteous speech, wa ablagha fil udhr, and it's going to be more effective. You insult, they're worthy of it, but you just draw lines. You call out with objectivity and without exaggeration, and maybe some of those people who were misguided, then they will come back towards the truth. And then the Imam says, instead of insulting them, why don't you say these words? Allahumma ahqin dima'ana wa dima'ahum wa aslih dhata baynina wa baynihum. Oh Allah, protect our lives and our blood and their blood. And rectify our affairs. The followers of Muawiyah, Imam Ali is saying, I want you to pray. They are our brothers. Imagine the Muslim Ummah today. We have hardliners among Ahl Sunnah, among Ahl Tashayyu, among Salafis, among Sufis. We feel like, those non-Muslims who are at our door and are taking our rights, our dignity, our lives, our countries. We can deal with them later. Right now, it is this person who is within the family of Islam, who recites the Quran, who performs the 5 daily prayers, who goes for Hajj, who does all of the acts of Islam, but because they disagree with me on one part of the teachings of Islam, I think they are my enemy. And all my attention, it is to defeat them and to attain a victory against another Muslim. Imam Ali says that وَأَصْلِحْ ذَاتَ بَيْنِنَا وَبَيْنِهُمْ. Oh Allah, rectify our affairs so we can be brothers once again. Because the strength of the ummah is when the ummah is taken away from the distraction and the deviation that comes from shaitan, and not the victory of one part of the ummah against the other. So we have the hilm of Imam Ali, and many other examples throughout his life. This is one of those attributes. It's a little bit more difficult to mention than the courage of Imam Ali, because when you mention the courage of Imam Ali, many of us, we can celebrate his courage on the battle because we are not fighting on a battlefield. And so we can take vicarious honor in the courage of Imam Ali, and it doesn't mean anything has to be different in my life. But when we mention the forbearance of Imam Ali and his hilm, then that means that I need to change my own personality. I have a temper, I have a busy life, I have a stressful job, I can't make excuses for myself. I need to be compassionate, I need to be kind, I need to be merciful, I need to think of the greater interests of the ummah, even when other members of the ummah turn to me and say, you are a kafir, you are misguided, you are a follower of bid'ah. They can say that. But I should respond with the wisdom and the mercy and the grace of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad alayhimu salatu wassalam. And after Imam Ali was struck in the Masjid of Kufa, you see the forbearance of the Imam. Imam Ali was struck. He was brought back to his home, wounded, bleeding. That aged warrior who had spent his youth and his entire life fighting for the sake of Islam, never turning away from a battle, never turning away from an enemy, no matter how numerous they may be. Finally, he had attained that prayer that he had made since a young age. Oh Allah, allow me to die the death of a martyr. And some of the companions of Imam Ali, they captured Ibn Muljam as he tried to escape. And they tied his hands and his feet tightly with a rope. Imam Ali had come home and the wound had still not been treated. Blood was gushing from the head of Imam Ali and dyeing the white hairs of his beard red. His face had lost its color and his body had lost its strength. And Imam Ali saw that as he lay on his bed, Ibn Muljam is brought before him. And Ibn Muljam was now shaking with fear because he had not expected to be captured. And Imam Ali, he didn't speak about his own pain. He said to Ibn Muljam, tell me, was I an unjust Imam for you? Did I do anything that was against the command of Allah? Why did you consider it that you have the right to assassinate me? And it is said for a moment, even Ibn Muljam, in spite of his evil and his hatred, had no words with which to answer. And then Imam Ali, he turned to Imam Hassan. He said that, oh Hassan, the ropes with which the hands and the feet of Ibn Muljam have been tied are tight. He is my captive right now. Loosen those knots so that he is able to bleed and his blood is able to circulate even as the blood gushes from the open wound of Imam Ali. And then when a doctor comes, a physician comes in order to look at the wound of Imam Ali, and he says for milk to be brought so that Imam Ali can have something to drink to perhaps regain some strength, the Imam says, give some of this milk to Ibn Muljam because he is our captive. And a captive and even a criminal in the house of Imam Ali is not treated with less respect than a guest. And Imam Ali said that if I live, then I will make my determination about what to do with Ibn Muljam. And if I am not going to survive, then, oh Hassan, you have the right to make the decision. If you decide to kill him in punishment for his crime, then one strike with a sword as he struck me once. Do not torture and do not mutilate his body after you have punished him. Imam Ali now is speaking with his dying breaths, and he is saying that even my killer should be shown mercy and should be shown dignity, for if he is a criminal, he is also a human being. And now this news spreads throughout the city of Kufa. And all of the companions of Imam Ali, they rush to the door, wishing to hear. We have experienced this when rumors circulate of the death of a beloved leader, and we say that no, this rumor cannot be true. And all of a sudden we forget our food and we forget what we are doing. Oh Allah, preserve the life of somebody who is not an imam, who is not a ma'soom, but has been a role model, has been like a father, has been a leader, a scholar, a guide for us. Imagine those, they were not confronting the rumors of the death or of the injury of just a beloved leader or a scholar, but of the heir of the Prophet, of the brother of the Prophet, of a ma'soom imam, of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They heard this rumor and they rushed from wherever they may have been in the early morning, where they may have been with their families having breakfast, or where they may have been in their prayer, and they rushed to the door of the house where Amir al-Mu'mineen was. And many of them, they were fasting because it was the month of Ramadan. Those who were older, maybe they were not. And there they saw that Imam Ali was being now looked after by his family. And because the daughters of Imam Ali were there and they were mourning and grieving the injury of their father in their own way, Imam Ali said to Imam Hassan, go out to the companions outside, give them my salam, give them my prayers, and tell them that they should disperse. For now, it is a moment for Imam Ali to spend with his companions. But some of the companions of the Imam, they just could not bring themselves to leave. One of them was the beloved companion of the Imam, Sa'sa' ibn Suhan. It is said that he said to the messenger who had come out of the house, can you give a message to Imam Ali that our hearts will never be able to be at peace? You were the messenger and the symbol of Islam amongst us. The message came inside, and Imam Ali sent a message to Sa'sa'a. He said, O Sa'sa'a, kunta khafif al-ma'una, kathir al-ma'una. O Sa'sa'a, you always were a great aid to me, and you never gave me any hardship. All of your assistance and your love and devotion, I benefited from it, and I never had to suffer any burden from your side. O Sa'sa'a, may Allah bless you. And it is said that Sa'sa'a left. But one companion stayed at the doorstep of Imam Ali, Asbagh ibn Nubata. And when he heard the crying of the children of Imam Ali inside the house, he began to weep. And Imam Ali heard the sound of the weeping of Asbagh outside the doorstep. He said to Imam Hassan, go and see who is outside the door. And Imam Hassan came out, and his own eyes were red, and his beard was wet with his own tears. He saw Asbagh. He said, oh Asbagh, did my father not give a message for everyone to disperse? And Asbagh said that do not think I have been disobedient, but I tried to stand, and my feet do not have strength. My soul does not have the strength. Where can I go when I do not know whether my Imam will live or die? Imam Hassan had mercy on Sa'sa'. On Asbagh ibn Nubata. He came back silently into the house. He said that Amir al-Mu'mineen, I saw that it was Asbagh. He was sitting outside the door and he was weeping. And when I asked him why he did not disperse along with the other companions, he said that how can I go and where will I find the strength? Imam Ali said, oh, my son Hassan, allow Asbagh to come inside. Asbagh came. And when he looked upon the injury of Imam Ali, he said that, oh my master, what has happened to the beauty of your face? That I see that you no longer have that same strength and that same energy. What happened to the smile that I always saw playing on your lips? And now Imam Ali, he looked at Sa'sa, and if he didn't have the energy to smile with his lips, there was love in his eyes. He said that, Sa'sa, this is the time for me to bid farewell. May we meet once again in heaven. And Sa'sa began to cry uncontrollably. And Imam Ali said that, and Asbagh began to cry uncontrollably. Imam Ali said that, oh Asbagh, do not cry. Innaha wallahil jannah. Oh Asbagh, I am going to paradise. My beloved Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi has promised me that after my martyrdom, my next stop in the journey to eternity will be to be reunited with him in paradise. And Asbagh said that, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, I have no doubt that you are going to heaven, but I am weeping because I will be alive in this hellscape of a world while you are no longer amongst me. Where will I go for guidance? Where will I go to hear your eloquent sermons? Where will I go to be inspired by the sound of your recitation of Quran and your dua? Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, when you are no longer in this world, what value does life have for Asbagh ibn Nubata? And I can only imagine that when Ahlul Bayt heard those words, it made them even more filled with grief and sadness. For Asbagh was bidding farewell to his Imam, and they were bidding farewell to their Imam. and to their father, and to the one who represented the heritage and the memory of the Messenger of God and Fatima Zahra and the entirety of Islam. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to always have the remembrance and the memory of Ahlul Bayt in our hearts. What we learn from the life of Imam Ali is to devote ourselves to Islam. There are many things that will distract us, but let us make that covenant to Allah, that, oh Allah, inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. As our Imam lived for Islam and died for Islam, oh Allah, allow us to live for Islam and die for Islam and live all of our moments and devote all of our assets and our abilities to your path. Oh Allah, allow us to offer our sincere allegiance to the Imam of our time. Our condolences on the loss of Amir al-Mu'mineen and on the martyrdom of all of the martyrs who have given their lives for Islam in these days. Oh, our Imam, accept our love, our obedience, our allegiance, and we pray that he accepts us as his obedient servants and followers. And we pray that Allah fulfill our hajat, answer our prayers, and he grant us the intercession and the company of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad for all eternity. Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
When our Imam Hussein was put between the sword and humiliation, bayna silla wa dhilla, he famously said, hayhat minna dhilla. We are far from humiliation. This is a noha which recalls those words of Imam and also connect with the events of today. No bay'ah to your emperor, O Shimran ibn Saad. We are the people of Sharaf. Tell this to Ibn Ziyad. No bay'ah to your emperor, O Shimran ibn Saad. Silla wa dhilla, hayhat minna dhilla. Our honor we remember, we shall never surrender. Bayna silla wa dhilla, hayhat minna dhilla. Everyone, hayhat minna dhilla. Said Muslim ibn Tis my will, O Habib. Do not leave Al-Hussein alone until you are Shaheed. Said Muslim ibn Awsija, tis my will, O Habib. Do not leave Al-Hussein alone until you are Shaheed. He is Hujjah of Allah, he is the son of Zahra. Bayna silla wa dhilla, hayhat minna dhilla. We are the righteous nation, no true humiliation. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. Everyone, هيهات من الذلة. He is شبيه مصطفى. Oh Ummah, can you see? He is Abih Karbala. He is my son Ali. He is Shabih Mustafa. Oh Ummah, can you see? He is Abih Karbala. He is my son Ali. There is no one more worthy. تقدم يا ولدي بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. Allah is our selector, Allah is our avenger. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. Everyone, هيهات من الذلة. Said Ghazi to the army of inhuman ashqiya, stop me, O cowards, if you can, from reaching Al-Qamar. Said Ghazi to the army of inhuman ashqiya, stop me, O cowards, if you can, from reaching Al-Qamar. I am the son of Haydar, who won Khandak and Khaybar. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. My faith is like a mountain, and Kawthar is my fountain. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. هيهات من الذلة. The Ashqiya paraded us from Kufa unto Sham. Baba, they put a shackle on my brother and Imam. The Ashqiya paraded us from Kufa unto Sham. Baba, they put a shackle on my brother and Imam. My ears, they are still bleeding, but my lips are repeating. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. For I am your Sakina, riding in your Safina. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. Everyone, هيهات من الذلة. Zainab, in voice of Ali, said, listen, O Yazid, this message of Husainiyat you can never defeat. Zainab, in voice of Ali, said, listen, O Yazid, this message of Husainiyat you can never defeat. Allah is our guarantor, but you shall have no shelter. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. My brother did his duty, and all I saw was beauty. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. هيهات من الذلة. Remembering your martyrdom, your pain and imtihan, we nurture our readiness for Akhirul Zaman. Remembering your martyrdom, your pain and imtihan, we nurture our readiness
for Akhir al-Zaman.
We are your loyal Shia. Mahdi is our Mawla. Bain as-silla wa zilla. Hayhat minna dhilla. This honor we remember. We shall never surrender. Bain as-silla wa dhilla. Hayhat minna dhilla. This honor we remember. We shall never surrender. Bain as-silla wa dhilla. Hayhat minna dhilla. Hayhat minna dhilla. Hayhat minna dhilla.
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. This earth has become orphan. This earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. This earth has become Zainab, from your head the shade of Ali taken. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Today the oceans weep and the wind wails. The sky has fallen and the ground turns pale. On this day, even the strongest mountain shaken. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Today they silent the peak of eloquence. Today has censored the peak of patience. Today Abbas, the mighty lion, is broken. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Zainab collapses as Haidar's eyes close. The heavens tremble hearing Zainab's woes. Baba, don't leave me. Baba, I beg you, awaken. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Zainab now starts the journey of pain. You will be brought back to Kufa in chains, saying, "Oh Baba, in your city I'm forsaken." On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. On this day, without you, this earth has become orphan. Ali foresaw the deaths of Hussein and Hassan. With his own death, he felt the death of both his sons. Struck by a Hussein.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام على علي أمير المؤمنين. السلام على فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام على الحسن والحسين وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله